Have we had a few days of nice weather and suddenly we're talking vacay thrillers? Of course we are. Hello friends, welcome back to Francesca's Books. My name is Francesca, these are my books, and here we talk about all things thriller books. And today we're talking spring, summer thrillers. Maybe they're just a summer vibe and they're just set in the summer, or I've got some actual like set on vacation style thrillers. And spoiler, there is a couple of romance books in here. You can't really get away from it when it's like spring, summer, like that is kind of the vibe. So I have 16 book recommendations for you today to have a look through, see which ones take your fancy and just boost your TBR this summer. I've got a selection of some that I've already read, reviewed, can wholeheartedly recommend, and then I've got a few that are on my TBR for the summer, so books that I've really got my eye on, I've been very excited to be released, or just books I've had for a while and I've been waiting for summer to read. So if you guys have read any of those ones, please do let me know. And before we dive in, I just wanted to mention that I have set up memberships on my channel, so if you are interested in seeing all of my videos 24 hours in advance and connecting with me on a bit more personal level, you can check out memberships. There is just a join button next to the subscribe button if you want to click that as well. I want to be my guest. So when I hear spring, summer thrillers, I feel like it's quite difficult for authors to get this right, because if they're a thriller writer at first and just set their book in like a summer, spring vibe location, that really works for me. If they're trying to be spring, summer first and then just like throw an unaliving in, I'm just a bit like, oh. So the first person who always springs to mind when I get asked this question is T.M. Logan with The Holiday, and I do believe this has been turned into a TV show or film, I'm not 100% sure, but this book is probably one of the best holiday summer thrillers that I've read. So it follows this group of friends, there's a couple of couples, some kids, and just like their family dynamics, and they all rent this like really big villa in the south of France, which is one of my personal favourite places. Definitely doesn't pay off part of my favouritism here. But they go, they're having a great time, and then there is just drama. There is affairs, there's scandal, there's like all these like secret whispering conversations going on, and of course there is unaliving. So you've kind of got everything in this book. I think at the time I only gave it a 4 star, but like on reflection I would probably rate it higher. I also love this author, so I feel like I do an injustice by not speaking about him enough. I've also been talking about Kindle Unlimited books recently as well, and this one is indeed on Kindle Unlimited, so if you want to check that out, you can almost read it for free. And then next, when you hear Riley Sager, I think you think of like autumn and spooky and like his haunted house book Home Before Dark, or maybe like atmospheric clifftop mansion in like The Only One Left, but I see through this. I see his thriller books. Summer books. And the ones that I would recommend are The House Across the Lake and The Last Time I Lied. Both of these just give the biggest summer vibes. I just love this author. So in The House Across the Lake, we have a woman who is an alcoholic, and she goes to like try and get her head straight. She's trying to just work through her issues, and she goes to this like really remote lodge by a lake because she just like needs the space because she is an actress. And then when she's there, she meets and befriends this other actress who's also residing at the lake, who only goes missing. There's something like really summery and just like lovely and like holiday vibes about being by the lake. I think that's what gets me in this book. I'm not even sure it's set in the summer, if I'm being honest, but these big lake vibes, it just feels like a lake house break you would go to like in your own country, I think. But this book is more on the controversial side. Some people love it, some people hate it. I of course absolutely love it, but I understand why some people don't. And then the other book, which is probably a more solid summer thriller recommendation, is The Last Time I Lied, again by this author, and this is because it is set at a summer camp. So it follows this woman who went to this summer camp like 15, 20 years ago, and when she was there, the friends that she'd made and the people she was like bunking with went missing. And then she comes back 15 or 20 years later, which is the current narrative, as like an art counsellor. She goes back very, very reluctantly, but the people who own it are just really keen for her to come back and like be a part of it again, only for the same thing to happen again and her bunkmates go missing again. And she's like, come on, like there has to be something else going on here, like I am gonna go get to the bottom of this. And then next I would recommend 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. So this is technically a YA book, but it is brilliant, and I think if you're after something that's like summery, spring themed, but maybe like a slightly easier read, I think this would be my go-to recommendation. So this follows a girl called Red. She is like late teens, and she hires this RV to go on like this big summer road trip with her friends, and everything is going great until the RV's tires are all punctured at the same time. Her friends are being like aimed at by her, and she's like, what the hell have I done that is so bad that my friends are literally trying to be unalived? So it is quite a heavy theme actually thinking about it for a YA book. But I do think the way it's told is like classic YA. Like sometimes I read YA, like I recently read That's Not My Name by Megan Lally, and that kind of was YA but read a little bit more like new adult. This is I think just classic YA, but I still would definitely recommend it. Also, if you are into YA, I of course am not as much as I was at one time, but Liar's Beach is also another YA summer thriller which you may want to check out if that's what you're going for. Or if you just have like any teens, if you have kids and you're thinking they love to read but you want it to be appropriate, these. And then next is more of an author recommendation as opposed to a specific book, but Lucy Clarke always writes destination thrillers, which I am a huge fan of. So the ones that I will actually recommend are One of the Girls, which is set in Greece, and it follows this group of girls, you'll be very surprised to know, that go for like a hen do, and it is just drama, it is just chaos, it is just like a girls' holiday gone wrong. I think as well in this book you've got all the girls' points of view, which I quite like. There wasn't like any voices that weren't heard from this story, and I feel like that kind of rounded it out a little bit more. I think this is probably my favourite Lucy Clarke book, and not just for the atmosphere and the setting, but it just was a perfect read on holiday. And then the other Lucy Clarke book, which I would say is a go-to, is The Hike, and this isn't set in the summer, but it's very much like holiday vibe. So they're hiking in Norway, so it's not like really hot, but it still gives the same sort of atmosphere. It's like shorts and t-shirts hiking weather. And this followed 4 women instead of 6 this time in One of the Girls, and I just feel like that was maybe a little bit easier to keep track of, and there was also a lot more of an outside point of view from like their actual lives were a bit more developed in this one. And I think there was just so many more suspicious characters in this as opposed to the other like Lucy Clarke books I've read. Do you know what, thinking about it, this is actually kind of giving. This next book I haven't seen many people talk about as a novel, but it was adapted to a TV show starring Jenna Coleman, who is like my childhood it girl. So of course I watched it, and it is Wilderness by B.E. Jones. I'll see if I can find the like movie poster to put here, but these are quite similar. I feel like Lucy Clarke wrote it better, but this story played out quite well on TV, so these would be ones to watch if you like either of them. And Lucy Clarke has also written No Escape, which is set on a boat on the outskirts of Thailand, and all the chaos that happens in that journey as well. So if you're looking for like thrillers set on a holiday, Lucy Clarke is definitely a go-to, and we'll come back to her later. Next is a bit of a different direction. So this book isn't set on holiday, but it is set in the summer, and I think that's why it just gives summer vibes. Can't really explain it aside from a vibe. And it is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, and this is a wonderfully, wonderfully written book. I think this is one of Lisa Jewell's best, so even as not a spring-summer thriller, I think I would just pick this up anyway. And it follows these 2 women who have the same birthday, and one of them is like uber successful, like has a shit together basically, and the other one is just kind of like, and she's like, why is that not me? We were born on the same day, we were born in the same hospital, bit weird, I know. And then she's kind of like, that could have been my life, and it wasn't. So she's had loads of things happen in her life, and she's thinking, I want to tell my story. And the other woman whose birthday was on the same day is a podcaster, so she's like, I want her to tell my story. But the woman who has a podcast very quickly realizes, like, why have I even agreed to this? Like this woman is crazy. And then next up is a book that I recommend all the time, so if you have watched any of my videos before, you will know the whole plot of this book, but it is The Last Passenger by Will Dean, and of course this is set on a cruise ship, and why is included in this video. The cruise doesn't take place over the summer, but it's still giving the same like atmosphere. And it follows Kaz, who gets on a cruise ship from Ireland to New York, and she has a wonderful first night on board with her partner, and then when she wakes up the next day, she's completely alone, and she thinks, well, who's even driving the ship? No one. All of that happens in like the first 15 pages, so this is definitely one of those books you just have to trust me and just open it and just read it. But I will caveat, if you have a cruise coming up, maybe don't read it, because it is quite scary in terms of like what could happen in these situations. Like, I'm someone who just does not get affected by this whatsoever. I literally read Drowning by TJ Newman on a plane. Like, I live for the vibes, but I know some of you all aren't as crazy as me. And then before we dive into my spring-summer TBR of books that are exclusive spring-summer releases, there is one more book I'm going to tell you about, and it is a book that I don't really talk about too much because I would only probably recommend it in this exact scenario. It's not the best book I've ever read, but I did really enjoy it. It is Something in the Water by Catherine Steadman, and it's this couple, and they go on honeymoon, and they decide to go diving off one of the really tropical islands. I think they're in like Bora Bora or somewhere, and they dive down and they find this duffel bag, and they're like, uh-oh. So they retrieve it, and they're like, what is this? And you find out what's in the duffel bag and like the consequences of that. And I think the reason why I don't talk about it loads is because it does, after that initial, reads more like suspense. But in some of these books where they're on a honeymoon and they go, they do the thing, they like come home a lot of the time after the thing has happened. So you're like 50 pages only on the vacation. This one, you're on the vacation for the majority of the time, which I very much enjoyed. Exhibit A of a book I thought was a summer book but wasn't. Looks super summery, right? They come home after like 40 pages and you're like, oh, Not what I signed up for. So I have 4 books that are on my spring summer radar. They're not all new releases, they are just like spring summer vibe style books. So the first one is 5 Nights by Rachel Wolf, and I bought this last year and just didn't get to it in the summer, and I'm just realizing it's another like boat book, but I just feel like they are so good because they're such like isolated location books. And this follows 2 girls who are estranged friends, and then they reunite on this boat for 5 nights, and all sorts of chaos takes place. So it says, first night you'll be wrapped up in the grandness of the boat. Second night you'll be wondering who sent the threatening notes. Third night someone will die. Fourth night you'll discover that someone knows the truth of what you did. And on the last night you'll be left for dead. I also really like this cover as well. So this is my number 1 summer book that I'm going to try and read. And then I've also got Our Last Resort by Clemence Miquelon on my radar. This is a brand new release this summer, and it follows a couple who go to a luxury resort, as you can imagine, and they're trying to like rekindle their marriage, just like get back to like the couple that they were, and it's all very, you know, idealistic, until there is a body in the pool one day when they wake up. So this is written by the same author who wrote The Quiet Tenant, which I very much enjoyed. I gave this a 4.5, but I haven't read anything else by them, so this is just a bit of a see if it's an author thing or maybe a book thing that I enjoyed in this one. I think Our Last Resort has some like residual cult vibes as well. I think one of the main characters used to be in a cult, but as you guys know, I don't tend to dive too much into the synopsis. I much prefer just going into the book and just seeing what happens and not knowing like the huge things that are about to be revealed. So that's what I've got from my initial searchings, but again, I won't go into it too much. And the final book on my spring summer TBR radar, as it were, is a book that's coming out in July in paperback. This has already been published at the start of this year in hardback, but we know I'm a paperback girly. And it is Back to Lucy Clarke, and her release this year is The Surf House, which pretty much is what it says on the tin. It's this group of people who go to Morocco for like a surfing retreat, and it just goes down. So our female main character goes to the surf house just to try and like escape reality for a bit and have a bit of a retreat and a bit of just like, you know, nice surfing time. I mean, why wouldn't you want to do that? I literally did this trip like last year on like a surf yoga retreat. I actually vlogged it if you want to see, but it was exactly that, like literally to the letter. And in this book, the place she turns up to at the surf house, somebody went missing like a year ago, and she's thinking that was a bit suspicious, so I assume more people go missing. And then, because I'm nothing if not well-rounded, spring and summer does just scream romance, so I thought this was a good opportunity to tell you about some of my favourite rom-com style books. But just stay with me, because if you are just like a thriller girl and you're like, no, I'm here for the thrillers, thrillers only, thrillers is what I do, sometimes, okay, I'm going to be bold and say this, sometimes if you just read something that's not a thriller, like very, very occasionally, don't get me wrong, we are thriller girlies, it just kind of like resets you on like the different styles of books. So like sometimes I'm just reading and reading and reading, and I'm like, they're all the same, like everything is the same, and then I just pick up a rom-com and suddenly it's like fresh light again. So even if you only do it for that, here are the spring and summer ones I would recommend. So we all know how much I love Abby Jimenez, and she just has like a special sprinkle of something in her books, and I can't quite work out what it is, but on top of the actual romance side of things, like she is just fantastic at like making the character so real, and you so care in literally 400 pages, and you don't often get that with a thriller book. So this is my number 1 spring summer recommendation for romance, and it is just for the summer. Obviously. This follows a man and a woman, and they are both feeling like they are cursed in love. Like everybody that they break up with or has broken up with them kind of goes on to meet their like forever person. So they meet and they decide, we have the same problem here, let's date each other, and then the next people we date will have broken the curse. So you can only imagine what happens there. And then next up, I'm trash for Laurie Gilmore. I'm not even ashamed to say it at this point. These are such guilty pleasure books, but The Strawberry Patch Pancake House is like a perfect spring read, even if nothing but a palate cleanser. This is book number 4 in the Dream Harbour series, and it is my favourite book of this series so far. I did give it 4 stars. I just think it's really easy to read, and it is just it's just an all-round like nice romance book. So in this one, we are following a single dad who has just been told he has a 5-year-old whose mum has unfortunately passed away, and then we're following a woman who is really looking for a job. She can't find one, and she becomes their nanny. But I do think one of the best parts about this series is that you know all the other supporting characters now, because it is book 4, so do with that what you will. And then finally, Emily Henry is another author that is absolutely brilliant, especially for this time of year. I loved You and Me on Vacation. This was Oh, brilliant. I think it also helped that I did read this on holiday. And it follows this man and this woman who go on holidays together every single year, but like that's all they do. They just have this 1 week, this little bit of time reserved for each other to go away. And over the years you get like their story like unfolding. And finally, the other Emily Henry book that is worth mentioning here is Happy Place. This is very much a similar vibe to, imagine like The House Across the Lake, but like not sinister. Like it's just friends, they're by a lake, they're having fun, and it is a second chance romance, which I would never normally gravitate to, but the way this was written was wonderful. So they are all my seasonal recommendations. I really hope you enjoyed this video. As always, if you have any more recommendations to add to this list, do not hesitate to comment. I love adding more. And if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.